Marvel's Spider-Man 2, released October of 2023. Currently exclusively available on the PlayStation 5. However, it is likely to receive a PC port, retailing for $69.99. Spider-Man 2 is the third game in Sony's Spider-Man series, following the events of Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales. This time around, you get to play as both Spider-Men, and may switch between them freely. However, certain missions, as well as certain side activities, may only be accomplished by one or the other. And if you approach something with the wrong Spider-Man, the game will prompt you to switch to the correct Spider-Man for the mission or side objective in question. But you never need to be in doubt about which Spider-Man to use, as the in-game Spider app will tell you which missions correspond to which Spider-Man exclusively, and which ones can be done by either. And it should be noted that in most ways, the two Spider-Men in question, Peter Parker and Miles Morales, are equivalent, with both having slightly different but highly similar individual abilities. They both share the exact same spider gadgets this time around. There are only 4 gadgets this time, and they are mostly for crowd control. Each Spider-Man has his own skill tree to fill out as you level, but there is also a shared skill tree. Their individual skill trees are more about their special moves, whereas the shared skill tree is about their regular combat abilities, and also their ability to move through the city. Speaking of moving through the city, fast travel is back in this game. However, it takes much longer to unlock it in all the zones than it did in the previous games, as fast travel is actually unlocked by you accomplishing so much within each subsection of the city. And as those activities are actually unlocked as you progress through the game, some zones will take much longer than others to actually be available for fast travel. This lack of immediate fast travel can seem an annoyance at first, but it's somewhat offset by the addition of spider gliding. Either Spider-Man can choose to glide, and there are various wind currents and updrafts for you to enjoy to just keep gliding. And there's even side activities built entirely around you gliding. Unlike the original Spider-Man, this game is far less episodic in its storytelling. Where the first game had you deal with several different events as small arcs, this game has everything feel much more unified. Starting out with a great opening where Peter and Miles work together to stop the Sandman, we next find out that Kraven the Hunter has come to town looking to hunt various Spider-Man villains. And over the course of the game, you will discover that several villains have met their end this way. And while this is happening, Peter's childhood friend Harry Osborn, who was missing in action in the first game due to some kind of horrible, debilitating disease, is back and apparently cured. And we find out this miraculous cure has happened by him being bonded to the Venom symbiote. This leads to Kraven and Venom being the A and B story for the game overall. In addition to this, both Peter and Miles have their own stories they deal with. With Peter, we've seen his story done before in other Spider-Man media. He ends up bonded with Venom. He likes the extra power it gives him, but he doesn't like the added aggression it causes. He has to come to terms with this and overcome the situation. Who could have seen this coming? Miles, on the other hand, has to deal with Peter being busy with his childhood best friend. He also needs to come to terms with maturing and coming into his own as his own kind of Spider-Man. And while this story is a little cliched, it is still better than what Peter got. A lot of the story threads that were left open in Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales are wrapped up here during side missions, and these are oftentimes quite satisfying conclusions. Gameplay-wise, virtually everything here has been improved. Combat feels even smoother. They've found a good balance between the individual Spider-Man special abilities and gadgets. And Mary Jane comes back this time around with her own missions, but they aren't terrible to do this time around, as this time around she's had a little self-defense training and a stun gun, making these sections considerably more tolerable. The only complaint I have with gameplay, and it's a very minor complaint, is that Miles still has his camouflage abilities, but the game never really does much with them, or gives you much of an opportunity to make use of them. And that's a rather odd decision, as Miles' camouflage abilities is one of the defining differences between him and Peter. And as it is present here, I think something more could have been done with it, especially since there were objectives that only Miles could complete. There are some other things in the game that are a little odd. Despite this being a Venom story, Eddie Brock is nowhere to be found. And despite there being no Eddie Brock, Venom still ends up looking like the classic incarnation of what we think of as Venom. That is to say, being a much larger character than Peter, with fangs and a long tongue. But the thing is that Venom is only so large because Eddie Brock is a much larger man than Peter Parker. And I thought that might be because Kraven the Hunter was going to get the Venom symbiote at some point, but that doesn't happen here. In fact, the guy that ends up becoming Venom later in the game is portrayed as being the same size as Peter, at least roughly, but it's a minor quibble on my part. And after all, it's an alien entity of some kind. It can have all kinds of powers. Maybe it can expand you. So is Marvel's Spider-Man 2 worth your time and money? Well, its price tag of $70 is a bit steep. However, it does have a fairly good story overall, and excellent gameplay. Gameplay that will last you around 20 hours. And a bit more than that if you're truly looking to be a completionist. The gameplay is great throughout, and I think a lot of the side stories actually end up being more compelling than the main narrative. And of course, in addition to that, you can just wander around the city playing Spot the Easter Egg, being both Easter eggs for previous games in this Spider-Man series, but also Easter eggs for the broader Marvel Universe, and even for different incarnations of Spider-Man over the years. My only real issues with this game are very minor. It would have been nice had Miles and Peter had more to distinguish them when you were playing as them. The game also does a lot to hint at what will come in the next game. But it actually does it with so many items that I wonder if all of it will actually be made good on or not. As the game's been out for almost a year, and thus far there has been no DLC for Spider-Man 2. And some of this foreshadowing might be for DLC, but at this point it seems odd none has been released, nor has there been any major news about that. But putting that aside, I do think that Spider-Man 2 is absolutely worth your time and money. And while on the PlayStation Store it is still $70, you can find this game physically released for $50 at many retailers. And assuming you have a PlayStation 5 capable of playing discs, that is the way I would recommend you go. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and tell your friends.